Hey there, welcome to the Act of Coaching. I'm your host, Phil Askew, and in each episode, I sit down with certified coaches from ACT Leadership. Together, we explore their unique journeys into the coaching world and how they use their skills to make a real difference, both in their work and in their everyday lives. Whether you're a coach or simply coach curious, you're going to love this podcast. Enjoy the show. So it's wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for being on the Act of Coaching. I know we had our initial conversation and I was really excited to have you on that. So it was great to see you in the calendar.
Yes, I'm super excited to be here.
Fabulous. And the very first thing I start this show with is asking my guests about their niche or niche.
Yeah.
And I always laugh about niche and niche. It's like, how on earth did it end up in those two different ways of saying it? But who do you feel called to being in service of as a coach? And what is it that you help them with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a career coach and I work with people who are really passionate about how they spend their time and energy and are driven to make an impact, a positive impact on the world. And there might be something off about their professional life that's getting in the way of them doing that. And so people generally come to me when they're looking for a change. That change might be crystal clear, might be coming into focus, or they might not yet know what that change is. But the work that we do is to really understand what is it that they need to do? What is it that they need to alter to show up as their best selves at work? And my clients, they might change things on the surface, like move to a different industry or a role or shift from corporate to entrepreneurship or maybe set a different boundary so they can honor non-work parts of their life. But the deeper work that they're doing
Hmm.
is learning to act from a place of love and not fear as they move through their careers and the lives that they support.
Wow. That's very clear. Super clear. That's amazing. And do you get a sense of, I'm sure you do, but if you had to say what sort of pains that they're experiencing before they work with you, how is it impacting them and how is it impacting their lives?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that work can be a real breeding ground for fear, right? Most of us have to support ourselves. In the United States, oftentimes our healthcare is tied to being employed. We are in a burnout epidemic. We are in relationship with people often where there's a hierarchical nature to those relationships. And there are several things as part of our work lives that just are this, like I said, breeding ground for fear. And so the way that manifests is that it can be symptoms like stress and anxiety and burnout, which are extremely uncomfortable for the person who's experiencing them. But also, especially because I work with people who are so passionate about making an impact and showing up for others and making the world a better place, when you're gripped in fear, it's very difficult to impossible to do those things. So it can be very challenging for people who have this vision or this dream or this drive for themselves and the way they want to show up, but they're gridlocked by that feeling of fear. And so that I would say is the biggest challenge in what we do together is really understand there are fears, I like to joke, that kind of come from inside the house, our beliefs, our thoughts, our behaviors, and the things that we might be doing unintentionally to sabotage ourselves. And then also, there is a broader landscape. Look at the layoffs that are going on. Look at, like I mentioned, several of the things up at the top. Work is a necessary part of our life and can be challenging. So it's really working with people to understand what is within your control to really turn down the dial on that fear so that the love can shine through? And how do you navigate the external landscape that we're all faced with in different ways?
Fabulous. And did you mention the kind of demographic of people that you work with? Do they come from a specific sector?
It's pretty broad because what I've found, and at the beginning when I started my business, I thought about niche, nutch, banana, whatever it is.
Right.
But what I realized is that pretty industry agnostic, role agnostic, phase of career agnostic, this concept of needing to dial in or wanting to dial into what love means for you and to address the fears that are blocking you from moving forward, that's pretty universal. So at this time, I work with people across different industries and in many phases of their careers. Again, it comes down to a change, an empowered change, and really putting your hands on the steering wheel of your career and driving confidently forward.
Yeah, yeah. And what do you think it is there at the moment that kind of blocks them? So, what is it that you offer them that acts as a kind of bridge from those places that you described to that which they're yearning for?
Yeah, there are several things. I think the first thing that I want to really highlight is that feelings are not facts. Change comes with so many big feelings. And so if somebody is tapped into a love, and whether that is, I need to be spending more time with my child, or I feel very called to pursue this dream, or I am an artistic, creative soul, but I'm working in this soul sucking job. We we really need to look at that, look at the fear of moving forward and spending more time with that child, leaning into your art, going for that dream and saying, okay, what is a belief? I'm not going to make enough money. What are the aspects of our identity, right? This is not, I'm not going to be successful, or I might fail, or all of these things that keep us blocked. And really look at those, inspect each of those and say, okay, is this something that we can move forward with? But also, what I make sure that I do with all my clients is we don't just say, okay, yeah, all the fears are coming from inside the house. If you dream it, you can be it, right?
Mhm.
There are very real things as well. There are bills that need to be paid. You have to support yourself. You, again, have to also respect, I say, like the shape and size of your nervous system. So sometimes going for that big dream can be very scary to the point of it being debilitating. So we have to really look at one, what are the things within your control, within your mind, body, spirit that you can alter? But then also really look at the external landscape and make some smart choices for you moving
Yeah.
forward.
That reminds me of this. I can't remember the name of the book. I think it's called The Big Leap by a guy called Gay Hendricks. I don't know if you come across it. Yeah, and a fascinating book in terms of when we start pursuing something where we feel like we've hit the glass ceiling and we can't go any further for fear of what's out there. What if this thing that I deeply yearn for on the other side of this glass ceiling, what if it doesn't come off? What if I'm useless at it? What if I fail? And
Yes.
so we kind of sabotage and we bring ourselves back down again. And it
Yes.
reminded me of that when you were speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there there's this one quote, because again, sometimes the status quo, even if it is painful, is less scary than the unknown. Absolutely. There's so much that comes up when you bravely go into the unknown. And there are two quotes that I find myself coming back to time and time again. And one is, you cannot reach new horizons unless you lose sight of the shore. And that can be so scary. You're like, this is the land, this is the shore, this is the only thing that I've ever known.
Mm.
I want to go for the horizon, but gosh, what is out there? Am I a capable sailor? Once I get to whatever that destination, is my life going to be better? These are all big questions. But then the other thing, the motivator, what gets somebody off that shore? Now we're going to jump to another metaphor of a flower is, and the day came when the pain of remaining closed tight in a bud
Mm.
exceeded the pain that it took to blossom. And people generally come to me at that point when it's like, this bud, this status quo, this shore
Mm.
is not working for me anymore. And I want to blossom. And it's terrifying to do so. Having somebody to walk alongside you through that process to validate, yeah, it is freaking scary to go for what you want or what you think you want, but also the fear, we can't let it be a blocker. We're all here to do very important things.
Yeah. It reminds me of the phrase like, if not now, when?
But
When everything's okay, when all the ducks are in a line, or when someone and love passes away that instigates action. But it's, or if we get too old and yeah, another one, don't die with your music still in you. And very
yes,
similar, isn't it? These motivators that bring people to coaching.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it is that oftentimes we think of and interested in what are the things that people regret at the end of their lives. And it's always not going for something. And again, I try not to live my life or coach people to live with that end goal or some future state that we may never see in mind. But sometimes it's a helpful reframe
Yeah.
to talk to. And I don't know if you're familiar with The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron.
Yeah.
Fantastic. For folks who don't know, 12-step creative discovery recovery program. And one of the prompts I did it several years ago and I share with my clients, it really unlocked me is to write a letter to yourself from the 80-year-old version. What advice would they have for you? And so often people find so much wisdom in that, and something like that can really help them bravely move forward because we zoom out a little bit. It's bigger than this moment. It's what's the
So
life that you want to live.
is that writing a letter from your 8-year-old self to your adult self now,
Oh,
or
80.
the other way around?
She goes both directions. She absolutely taps into the inner child because what they've got to say is valid as well.
Yeah.
Generally, they're a great source of your purest joy because we learn these fears. So tapping into the child can be very helpful. But this one specifically is ET, the older version of yourself.
I see.
ET,
Yes,
yes.
yes,
So
yes.
the wisdom of age and looking back and writing
All
to
that's been accumulated.
exactly.
Wow, yeah, fabulous. It's really fascinating because I'm from a creative background as well. So I was in the web industry in the early days and I was trained as a graphic designer. So creativity was always a massive component of what it is that I did and what I still do now. So I do work with individuals who are innovators and founders and entrepreneurs, creators. And so it's really important that the creativity gets fostered and encouraged. And I think so much of the time, creativity can have a back seat. It can be knocked back, can't it? Like deprioritized
Yes.
in a world where kind of academia and finance and stability is like all important, which it is, of course, but creativity is equally important.
Absolutely. That very much resonates with me. And I think there's so many things that I'd love to say. First of all, I'm a musician and I come from a lineage of artists. And I think the relationship with my own creativity and art is something that it's been a journey. It's been a journey for me. Absolutely. But what I've realized, and I see this in so many of my clients as well, is that, yeah, creativity, it's not this optional thing. It's not a hobby,
Mm,
the way of being. And I'm of the belief that everybody is creative in some way. It just in what way? What are you creating and in what format? But there are certain people for whom I work with them, and I count myself in this category as well, where expressing yourself creatively through the arts is as essential as moving and going outside and being social. It's absolutely a part of yourself that needs to be expressed. But again, when I say work is a breeding ground for fear, a lot of times we have these tropes of the starving artist, right? If
yeah.
you express your creativity, you're going to be out on the streets or live a really impoverished life. But what about being impoverished of the soul? What is the impact of that? So 100%. And I love how you said too, right? The coaching and the act of coaching, that is also an art. And I view the work that I do with people, it's incredibly creative.
Mm,
And bringing one of the concepts that was taught by ACT, the reactive to creative, it's just another way of saying from fear to love.
mm.
Creation is an act of love. And so it's just figuring out what is it that the person wants to create? What's a life that they want to create or design?
So, how did you discover coaching? Like, how did that come onto your horizon, as it were?
Yeah. Yeah. I have always been somebody for whom I love a deep one-on-one combo. I always have. And I like to joke that my first coaching conversation, I didn't know that it was a coaching conversation, but I went out to dinner with my brother and asked him a bunch of, again, I have labels for this now, a bunch of powerful questions. I was not
Mm,
being a bossy big sister telling him what to do, but powerful questions that ultimately led to him going to tell this woman about his feelings for her. And years later, I officiated their wedding. She is my amazing sister in law. So I
wow.
joked that was one of my first coaching conversations. I was not sitting there saying, "What are you doing? Go tell her that you love her." I got curious. I got to see where he was at and then see that unfold. And he was fully the captain of his own ship in that moment. So there are many examples of conversations like that throughout my life. But really, coaching as a concept and having language for it came a bit later. So when about 5 years ago, I published an article about how to pivot your career because it's something that I had done several times. And it caught a little fire, and people started reaching out to me. I wound up facilitating a panel on career development. And that is when I first started sneaking into conference rooms at my employer to take clients to help them. Oh my gosh, I love this. And to see them proudly march towards their dreams and get over the fears of doing so and coming up with a plan and using my creative, but also my project management background where I joke,
Oh,
I'm
that's a good
good at
combo.
it's yes, you get the duality. My friends joke that I have high GSD or get shit done. So I bring that to my relationship with my clients. But I've got to share this. So as part of a leadership development program at the company that I was working for at the time, I'm a tech leadership accelerator. I got paired with a coach and I didn't know what that was. I knew what coaching was a little bit, but I didn't know what a coach was. And I'll cut to the end, wound up being an alumna of ACT who was coaching me. And it was one of the most transformational experiences of my life because it had the dual benefit of one, she worked with me to help understand my purpose, my values, the skills and strengths that I bring to the table. And she also served as the first real world example that I had of somebody who was a coach full time. I didn't even know that existed. So that was really the catalyst. I saw an example of it. It felt extremely aligned with who I am and what I want to do. And the decisions from there started unfolding.
Yeah. So I love that. That's amazing. And it's so interesting, that sort of decision choice point where we think, yeah, this is good as a client, but actually this is something I want to do now as well. I remember in my first coaching, 2009, I didn't know what coaching was. And you couldn't say coach without saying coach, life coach. It was a life coach at the time.
Yeah.
There was no other phrase for it. It was like life coach or no coach or tennis coach or whatever.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but now it's like you get with all these sub niches and all these like really specialist focus niches, which is wonderful. And obviously, ACT is very focused around leadership, and as in, how can you help leaders do their thing most effectively? And you spoke about above the line, below the line as a tool, and that's something we teach on the course. And I'm wondering what you remember about your training that really stays with you, like the tools. And yeah, what were your key takeaways, would you say?
Oh, so many. But if I were to focus in on the ones that were the biggest ahas for me, I would say that the work of pumping somebody else up and recognizing their strengths and celebrating wins, which I think we call that championing and acknowledgement, that came very easy. Love doing that, always have. But the thing that was really important to me is the act of challenging. That's also a very important part of what we do. And in the context of my work, this is how we really look fear in the eye. So
Mm.
if I'm just sitting across from somebody who's contemplating a change and I'm like, you go, girl, you got this, let's lean into your strengths, but I'm not also challenging and spotting resistance or spotting where fear might be at play or spotting where there might be a belief that's holding them back or even challenging I'm going to quit my job tomorrow. Hey, let's make sure that's grounded in love and not fear. So I think, again, there's so much in how we're raised and socialized to be positive and to be kind and to be nice. And that is fabulous. But challenging is one of the most important, if not the most important part of all of this, to have somebody who really sees all of it and feels comfortable stepping in and saying, I see this thing. And I think that it's worth further inspection. And then how to do that, you don't just barge in and say, you're wrong. Like I said, and I'm a broken record with this, but my clients are the captains of their own ship. And so all of the tools on how to properly challenge, where you're asking permission, where you're using sensing statements, where you're saying, this is my intuition, and I'm going to give this to you as a reflection and an offering, but ultimately it's up to you to decide the validity of this and how you want to move forward. It is a beautiful way to show up for and challenge someone in a way that doesn't rob them of their agency and autonomy over their life. So getting to one, acknowledge that's an important skill, two, practice it because was deeply uncomfortable for me before I realized, oh my gosh, this is so important. And to have these ways of doing it in such a way that it was actually productive and didn't put the person on the defensive. That was beautiful and so valuable, not just in my coaching work, but in all of my relationships where I care about the person and I want to bring up something that might be a little spicy. but it's in service to them ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know what's fascinating is that is whenever I've trained coaches in the past or whenever I was trained, what I noticed was the vast majority of coaches, our sort of personality is very comfortable with listening well. We're very good listeners innately, like we've been celebrated for it. And I suppose that's like why we veer towards the vocation of coaching is because people said, oh, you listen really well. Maybe you make a great coach. But then we recognize that in order to have range, we need to push back and we need to challenge. Exactly as you were saying, I have to build that muscle as well. Is I made a lot of assumptions. Will they not like me if I push back? If I will I feel like I'm undermining them if I say to them, actually, I don't believe you just now? What else is true? Or what's a different perspective of looking at this? But actually it was never met with that. It was always met with, oh, thank you for pushing back. I think that's the difference between a coaching conversation and a friend conversation, is
Yes.
that actually, I once had a mentor that said to me, the first thing he always says when he opens up in a new coaching dialogue is, I'm not here to be your friend, just to let you know that. I'm here to be your coach. And a coach acts and positions themselves in a very different way, in a much more kind of, I'm here being a champion for you, like standing shoulder to shoulder, facing in the same direction. I'm not here to make you feel better.
It's feeling good. We want to welcome the full range of human emotions. And again, when I talk about the love and fear that we possess, I'm not here to say we're going 100% in the direction of love. It is about turning to understanding and then adjusting the dial on that fear, right?
Yeah,
So we move towards that. And to ignore and to just boost the good feelings would be a disservice to people. We've
sure.
got to lean in. And I think another brilliant thing that I learned through ACT is how do you co-create a relationship right at the top where you built that foundation of trust and safety and I am here in service to you and your vision, and part of that is challenging, not just feeling good all the time. It's really
Yeah.
important.
Isn't that interesting? I think there's a lot of perception because I think the vast majority of the public don't know what coaching is still. And it's been around a long time now. It's established. I think coaching normalized itself, particularly in the UK, where I am here, through companies, through people getting leadership coaching or business coaching or leader coaching within companies, and that trickling down to privately funded individuals. And there's a normalizing and an understanding of it to some degree. Oh, you help me achieve goals, do you? But it's so much more than that, isn't it? It's not just the end result, because if we were to partner with people just to reach that end result, it still doesn't really give them autonomy. It doesn't have them sense into, I'm capable of this and I did this under my own steam. If anything, it gets that person hooked on their coach
Ah,
because it was because I was with the coach I was able to achieve this. And that's not our goal at all, is it? That's not our driver.
absolutely. And I think there's a lot of in the business of coaching, how do you retain people? How do you upsell them, keep them, and things like that? And I always bristle at that because here's the thing, and I'm very clear with my clients, I'm not creating a codependent relationship here. You don't need me. Right
Yeah.
now, you're choosing to partner with me. And when I say that we're going to design a career that you love and not one that's based on fear, there might be an end goal that we reach together. Aha, we've made it, but more likely it's a major milestone.
Mm.
But the work that we've done together has armed you with your own compass, with your own way of regulating your emotions, with your own way of interrogating your own thoughts and judging which ones of these are in service to me and which aren't. And underneath it all, I say I'm a career coach. And again, there's surface things that might change, but the deeper work that we're doing is to make sure that the person that I'm working with leaves our relationship with an improved ability to design a career. Yes. And the life that it supports based on love and not fear. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's something about when we declare our niche to the world as a coach, if you say career, I think it becomes tangible very easily, as in people are fully aware that they wish to kind of either get out of the role, improve the role that they're in, and they recognize that 5 out of 7 days is usually career orientated. And maybe that's shifted a little bit now after COVID and what have you, but still, it's such an important, massive chunk of our lives, isn't it? Career.
It
And I
is.
love that you are bringing the word love into that equation as well. And in many ways, normalizing it's okay to feel love and career, and to
Yes.
say it in the same sentence.
Yes.
And for it's okay for you to yearn for more in your career too.
Absolutely.
Oftentimes, generations before, oftentimes I think people felt like they had to settle because there's a security to this. And in the settling, it can deaden us. And we can just feel this heaviness descending and the dread of Monday morning and that kind of thing. So I love that you're bringing love into the equation. Yeah.
Yes. And it is love into your career. For some of my clients, their career is a major part of their identity, and they don't just want to survive. They want to thrive. They want to make a
Yeah.
big impact. It's a huge part of who they are and what they do. But also, another way that you bring love into your career, paradoxically, is by actually putting greater boundaries around that, making it less of your identity, making sure that it fits and it's right size for the life that you want to live. Again, I have this a lot with new parents where they go, my gosh, my priorities have shifted
Mm.
and I want to spend more time with my children. Or I work with creatives and they go, I actually would like to have work that I can clock in and clock out because I've got an album inside of me that needs writing. And depending on the person that I'm seated across from, it might be building a career. And this is what it was for me, a career that is pretty synonymous with who I am and the way I want to show up and the impact that I have. Whereas for other folks, a career built on love is actually to reduce the power that the career has in your life while still making sure that it supports you to do all of the other things in your life that are so important. So it
Yeah.
depends. That's also why I use the verb design. This is an artistic process that we're doing together. There's no one perfect outcome that we're moving towards. We're just moving towards love, whatever that means to you.
Hmm. Wow. This is really fascinating. Yeah, I resonate a great deal. And I'm thinking of the Generation Zs, the Gen Zs that I coach now and again. I love the Gen Zs. I just think that, and not to clump people together, but there's a big cultural shift towards purpose and meaning in the workplace and in where they're pointing themselves. It's
Yes.
what's the legacy I want to leave? Like, how can I, but not just, that was more of a millennial thing. What was the legacy I want to leave? But actual Gen Zs are proactive and they're getting on and doing it now. And that's
Yeah.
what I really love about them. It's they're stepping up and getting in.
Yes. Absolutely. And there's also there's another trend that I'm viewing, but I want to just absolutely plus one. The world that Gen Z has inherited is one where you can't put your head down. There are very
Yeah.
big issues that people feel very motivated to address. And I'm excited to work with more folks in that generation because, again, if you are born into a world with the geopolitical climate being what it is, the climate being what it is, there's a lot of very legitimate fears. But in order to make an impact, we have to make sure that they're learning how to take care of themselves and actually
Yeah.
show up to make the impact that they want to. So that's a big
Yeah.
exercise. And I'm excited to work with more folks again with impact at the helm. But I'm also seeing another trend. It's actually you'll see it on TikTok if you're ever there, but it's called the lazy girl job. It's the complete opposite. And this is also born out of Gen Z, where they would like something like a data entry, something where you can turn your brain off, have your coffee, have your music on, do the thing, and then go live your life. So it's these
Mhm.
two very different models within a single generation. And I think it illustrates that point. What does love mean to you? Do you want to wake up every day and have this very mission driven life? Or is it the case where you want to make sure that you are supporting yourself to then do? And again, actually, I'm pausing myself because that might also be very mission driven. You might have art that you need to create. You might want to do volunteer work that's very meaningful to you. Again, what is the money making engine and your relationship to that? And how does that best serve the life of love that you want to live?
That's interesting. You made me think about mission because I'm always talking about like purpose driven and mission driven people. These are the people or creators. These are the people that I work with. And I often talk about yearning. Like, what's the yearning you sense? What's the yearning you feel? Where does it show up in your being, in your body, in your thinking, and your livelihood and stuff? But not at the expense of your health and your heart and your soul. And it sounds like that's the sort of work that you're doing as well, which is really magnificent. And yeah, I think
It's
that's a beautiful thing. It can encapsulate so much in coaching, can't it? We can hold all of that good stuff.
exactly. Yeah, because the yearning might be for, and especially if you've lived a life where you've been trapped in fear and in survival mode, the greatest love that you could give yourself. And potentially it's a stepping stone to something else, or potentially it's just that's where you need to be, is to cultivate a greater sense of peace and calm and content in yourself in that moment. And that might be your work to start, might be the work to end. But it's how, again, this is where I really look to, and it's the client's agenda, right? And we really look at their relationship to the topic at hand and being very curious about what does love mean for that person. And that is going to indicate how we proceed forward together.
Oh, I could talk forever about this.
Yeah.
And
Same.
just one more thing has just popped to mind, which is a phrase that really motivates me if ever I feel I'm holding back or I'm not giving it 100%. And that's like love fiercely because this all ends. And it gets me motivated. I feel the tingle when I say that as well. Love fiercely. And yeah, I think we love our clients fiercely as well, don't we? To have them see what they are capable of. And I think we're doing wonderful work in the world.
Yes.
Okay. How can people find you? What's the best way of communicating and connecting with you?
Yeah. So I am on LinkedIn and on Instagram at Grace Vigeant. That's Grace, like the word grace. One of my values, give yourself grace. And then the last name is Vigeant. So that's Vigeant. And then at gracevigeant.com.
Oh, wonderful. Good. Nice and easy. Good branding.
I know.
It's not. The underscore Gmail at Joe. This has been amazing. Thank you so much. What an amazing conversation. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Same. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to The Act of Coaching. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please share it with a friend or colleague who you feel might find it valuable. Don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, because your 5-star review helps us reach more people who are curious about the power of coaching. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a future episode. Thanks again for being here. We really appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time.